These days, I may be all about the death and black metal, but some things you never grow out of.
Steven, what are you doing in there?
Drugs.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from 1999, and we're starting with Korn with Issues. Starting big here with probably my favorite Korn album, and by the way, I know that 1999 is not the year that new metal started by any means, but it is the year that it kind of blew up. And speaking of which, as for Korn, I love the debut, and both Life It's Peachy and Follow the Leader have some seriously high points. But this is probably my favorite album from start to finish. Check out my Korn tier list for more thoughts, but major highlights here including Beg For Me, Falling Away From Me, Make Me Bad, Hey Daddy, Somebody Someone, and Let's Get This Party Started. Massive production too from Brendan O'Brien with a bass end that never fails to get me banging my head like crazy. This is going to perfection. Then we have Crazytown with The Gift of the Game.
Come my lady, come my lady, you're my butterfly, sugar, baby.
Now, I always hesitate to actually call this a new metal album as it's extremely light on the metal part in my opinion. Really, this is mostly a group of white dudes doing corny rap while dressed in new metal garb and rocking tattoos.
I'm the DJ, bitch.
Yo, I'm the singer, rapper. I could do both, son.
Consider that their #1 hit on Billboard, Butterfly, has virtually no metal elements. That continues to be the only memorable song for me too, as even when they do bring out the distorted guitars on the likes of Toxic and Think Fast, it just sounds like Limp Bizkit and Head PE from Wish. Probably the worst thing on this list as it commits the cardinal sin of being boring, so it is going to meh. Then we have Sevendust with Home. Huge step up from the debut if you ask me. Lejean's got so much power, and I love the alternations between the aggressive harsh vocals and his singing, which is just so captivating. You've got some major classics on here too, like Waffle as well as Denial, which were definitely the ones that I remember the most from back in the day. Then you've also got Blender at the end with Chino Moreno of Deftones, but really the most notable thing about this album is just how damn consistent it is. Even some of my favorite new metal albums have some filler, but not so much here. My favorite from them personally, it is going to fantastic. Then we have POD with the fundamental elements of Southtown. Another album I owned back in the day, mostly due to the excellent track Southtown that I not only listened to on repeat, but it was also one of the earlier songs I learned on guitar. The rest of the album is just kind of okay. I feel like there's 2 or 3 other good tracks on here, but not particularly as memorable. Pretty corny lyrics, and I feel like unlike Limp Bizkit, they take themselves way too seriously. Some points though for stylistic variety with a little reggae on tracks like Set Your Eyes to Zion. Also their first platinum album, so props to them for that. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Machinehead with The Burning Red. Machinehead is not a new metal band, but this was definitely their detour into the sound like many bands dabbled briefly around this time, from Sepultura to Slayer. Rob Flynn even breaking out the crazy hairdo that I'm a little ashamed to say I also had the summer of 2000, and also a little embarrassed that this was the only Machinehead album I ever owned back in the day. I got it in one of those scam, like pick 15 albums for $30 mail-in deals. But I listened to it quite a bit back then, and revisiting tracks like Desire to Fire, From This Day, and The Blood, the Sweat, the Tears was quite the trip down memory lane. It's not good, but it's not the worst thing here either. The message in the bottle cover, though, is definitely a crime against humanity.
How embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this one at okay. Then we have Stained with Dysfunction. The band's last really heavy album before breaking it big with the slightly more commercially friendly Break the Cycle. Love the dark atmosphere and heavy riffing. Aaron screams a lot more on this thing too. It's not an album I feel inclined to go back to super often, but every time I do, I enjoy tracks like Suffocate, the groovy Just Go, Crawl, Home, and of course Mud Shovel, which was another one I put on my burn CD mixes back in the day all the time. Surprisingly consistent and cohesive listen. It has its faults, but on this list, it's on the higher end for me. I'm gonna put it at amazing. Then we have Dope with Felons and Revolutionaries. I used to be a relatively big Dope fan in the 2000s, but these days it's this debut that's the only one I still enjoy listening to. It's still edgy and kind of cringe at times, but not to the degree of where they would go from here. Think of it as kind of an extension of that early Marilyn Manson sound, combining elements of industrial with a rebellious attitude. Lots of fuck this, fuck that kind of lyrics, but ultimately fun for me on tracks like Opener Pig Society, Debonair with its pounding drums and infectious hook, the chugging, grooving Everything Sucks, and Spine for You. It's dumb, but I still enjoy it when I'm in the right mood, which is true of a lot of this music, really. Like, I still have a lot of fun with all this stuff, even the kind of bad stuff. This is going to great. Then we have Static X with Wisconsin Death Trip. As a fan of both industrial metal and nu metal, this was like the perfect collision of those worlds, and also with my introduction to Wayne's instantly recognizable syncopated vocals and hairdo. So many great songs that are both catchy and aggressive. Of course, you've got the classic Push It, which I can't even tell you how many times I've jammed along to, as well as the equally infectious I'm With Stupid, Fix, and Bled for Days. But I also like the kind of lower key atmospheric tracks like Stem and The Trance is the Motion, just an all-around good time and an instant classic, if you ask me. This one is also going to perfection. Then we have Methods of Mayhem with Methods of Mayhem.
You gotta listen to me. I tell you what I see. Never believe what you read. This shit is spreading like a disease.
Tommy Lee of Motley Crue fame's embarrassing attempt to capitalize on the nu metal movement. I was actually pleased that it was referenced in the Pam and Tommy series that came out a little while back.
The Lonnie? Tractor? I know who Lonnie is.
Quite a list of musicians here, though, known for much better music. Pretty shocking to dig into it, honestly, with everyone from Danny Lohner of Nine Inch Nails and A Perfect Circle to fucking Randy Jackson on bass. Yes, that Randy Jackson.
That was cool, man. It was kind of hot.
Also appearances from Snoop Dogg, Kid Rock, Fred Durst, Lil' Kim, and more. George Clinton is on this record. It can be kind of fun in a very stupid way, with tracks like Hypocritical, Anger Management, and Get Naked, but it gets worse and worse, I would say, the deeper you get into it from there. I'd compare it to enjoying like a Michael Bay film. Certified gold, if you can believe it. It was an interesting time for mainstream music, for sure, but yeah, it's going to meh. Not as bad as Crazytown, but yeah, not great. Then we have Cold Chamber with chamber music.
Cover me when I run.
Probably my personal favorite from these guys. People tend to talk more about the self-titled debut, but I'd argue as much of a perfect encapsulation of nu metal that album is, it's aged the worst for me at this point. I like the slightly more melodic turn and increased dynamic songwriting of tracks like Tragedy and Tyler's Song, still super heavy and fun, but with just a little bit more to chew on. I also love the string intro Mist and how it fits the album art and overall atmosphere. It's definitely not the most consistent album from track to track. Interestingly enough, that goes to Dark Days for me now, and the Shock the Monkey cover with Ozzy feels a little out of place, but overall I enjoy this one a lot more than many of the others here, so it is going to amazing. Then we have Mushroomhead with M3. Bit of a transitional album for this band. I would say this is where they actually tipped over into really making a name for themselves. I'd also say it's a big step up in quality from the last few, which I found to be largely kind of nonsense. Honestly, though, this is a band that gets associated a lot with nu metal due to a number of factors, including their look, but I wouldn't even exactly refer to them as that when it comes to the music. If anything, they feel more inspired by like Faith No More, which I would consider to be like a proto-nu metal group, but not actually part of the movement. Kind of like how Venom and Celtic Frost aren't really black metal bands per se. Unfortunately, they are not as nearly as impressive songwriters as Faith No More, in my opinion. Still interesting, not bad, but I've just never really been super into these guys. It's going into okay for me. Then we have Limp Bizkit with Significant Other.
It's just one of those days where you don't want to wake up. Everybody sucks.
Now, if somebody asked me, what is nu metal? I feel like I could just give them this album and say, this. It really is one of those records with all the defining elements, the mix of rap and screaming, the heavy down-tuned guitars, the DJ, and in my opinion, all those elements really firing on all cylinders. And regardless of what you think about the Bizkit and Fred Durst, the musicianship here is just beyond reproach, thanks especially to the talented Wes Borland, John Otto, and Sam Rivers. They were the masters of just taking a really simple groove and turning it into the most catchy, infectious thing you have ever heard. Some of their biggest tracks here too, in nookie, rearranged, and of course break stuff, which continues to be a workout staple for me to this day. Their best album, I would say, and campiness aside, it's no wonder that it hit #1 on Billboard and even went toe-to-toe on the charts that year with the likes of Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys. Normally I'd put this in perfection, but I limited myself to just 3 and it got beat out, so I am putting it at the top of fantastic. Then we have Powerman 5000 with Tonight the Stars Revolt.
Now this is what it's like when worlds collide. You ready to go? Got some ready to go.
The third album from this band, but considering how different and pretty bad the albums that came before are, this is the logical place to start. Far from the best album on this list by a long shot, I've often described it as like discount Rob Zombie, which notably vocalist Spider-One is actually Zombie's younger brother and he features on the track Blast Off to Nowhere. But if you ask me, this has one of the best nu metal songs of all time in When Worlds Collide. This was another one of those childhood primers for my later metal obsession too, as I spent many hours hearing this song while playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on my Nintendo 64. Some other fun tracks in Supernova goes Pop, Nobody's Real, and the title track. A bit inconsistent, I don't think any of the tracks live up to just how strong that single is, but it's a fun album with the full nu metal package right down to the music videos and costuming. A bit inconsistent, I don't think any of the other tracks live up to just how strong that single is, but it's a fun album with the full nu metal package right down to the music videos and costuming. I'm going to put this one at great tier. Then we have Puya with Fundamental. This was the only album on this list that I was not particularly familiar with. I like the Spanish language rapping though, which reminds me of Nonpoint, but then there's also this kind of vaguely sublime quality at times too. They like to fuse elements of jazz, salsa, and maybe even a little reggae into the metal. That could be interesting, but the execution feels a little bit sloppy in comparison to some other bands that do similar things. Still, points for being interesting and showcasing a level of songwriting and performance variety well beyond a lot of the bands in the genre. Check out the title track and see what you think, or for one of the heavier ones, you can check out Montate. I'm going to put this one at good. And then we have Slipknot with Slipknot. As I've said in a number of videos at this point, this record was really the turning point for me. I had been primed throughout the 90s at this point by alternative radio and movie soundtracks, hearing the likes of Korn and Rammstein, but this was the first metal album I think I listened to from start to finish, and man did it blow my mind the moment I pressed play on Sick in my Discman. Every song is a banger. You've got classics like Eyeless, Spit It Out, Liberate, Surfacing, and can we just take a moment to again mourn the time where songs like Wait and Bleed actually got mainstream radio play? Then you've got more atmospheric stuff like Tattered and Torn, Frail Limb Nursery, Prosthetics, and Scissors. Best vocals from Corey, in my opinion, best percussion to date, and best DJ elements from Sid, too. I have to put this one, obviously, at perfection. Y'all check out this playlist for more nu metal videos and rankings, or this video for whatever YouTube wants to recommend you directly. Let me know down in the comments, where would you rank these? Where do we agree? Where do we disagree? Do you want me to do more of these? And yeah, that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.